Part 2 of my tattoo horror story. So I was in the tattoo shop for about 2.5 hours. This wasn't because he was tattooing me for 2 hours, but because he kept on taking short breaks. He kept on telling me that he had to take a smoke break. And I was like, okay, that's fine, do what you gotta do. It was only him and another guy working there, nobody else. And every time he would take a smoke break, him and his coworker would go outside. During like the third smoke break that they had, I had to pee, so I went to the bathroom. And when you're coming out of the bathroom, you're able to see outside, like through the window. So I noticed that the guy that was giving me my tattoo had a pill bottle in his hand. I kind of figured it was like Tylenol or something. But he was pouring it into his coworker's hand and he looked mad sus. So I go back and I wait in the room, sitting in the chair. Mind you, my friend was with me. And they took another 10-15 minutes to come back. And the way that I was sitting, my head was kind of like leaning down. So every time he would come back, the door was behind me, so I didn't really have to look at his face. And keep in mind that this was the longest break that he took the whole time. So after we left, my friend told me that time that he came back, he had white powder all in his nose and he was trying to wipe it off. And my tattoo got infected. Has anybody else been in a really toxic relationship and never noticed it until after the fact? Because same. I thought I would give you some examples and see if anybody else could relate. So I was dating this boy. We'll call him Eugene. Eugene ended up going on a cruise with his friends. And at this point in our relationship, I never suspected that he was cheating on me. So this is really where the toxic started. He goes on his cruise, called me every single day, and then I went to his house the day he came back. He was changing his shirt and I noticed that he had a hickey on his neck. I was like, what is that? Because he was gone for over a week. Eugene says to me, yeah, I was sitting in the jacuzzi and my boy pointed it out to me and was like, yo, what is that? And I was like, yo, I don't know, what the heck? Mia's gonna think this is a hickey. And I was like, okay. So we're watching a movie and he falls asleep. So I took that opportunity to look through his phone. And this was the first time that I ever thought to go through his phone. And I see that he has a streak with a girl. So I investigate, find her Instagram, and I DM her and I'm like, hey girl, I'm coming to you as a woman. How do you know Eugene? Has anybody ever been in a toxic relationship and never realized it until after the fact? Because same. Part 2. So I look through his phone and I find that he has a streak with a girl for 3 days. So I investigate, find her Instagram, and I DM her. And my 15-year-old self was like, hey girl, woman to woman, how do you know Eugene? I see that you guys have a streak. I'm his girlfriend, so I just want to know if there's anything going on. And originally she denied it and said that she was talking to his friend. But I kept grilling her. I was like, his friend has a phone, so why are you Snapchatting Eugene? So then finally I asked her if we could FaceTime. She said yes. So we FaceTime and she starts spilling the beans. She said that they've been Snapchatting for 2 months, that she slid up on his friend's story asking who he is and what's his Snap. So we gave it to her. He would slide up on her story with hard eyes and talk about meeting up. And she said that she knew he had a girlfriend, but he said it wasn't that serious and that I was cheating on him, which I wasn't. She said he would block her every single time I would come over. I asked her what high school she went to. She was in 7th. Story of the time Miley Cyrus went to my elementary school. So I was in 1st grade and all the cool kids sat at the round table during lunch. And one of the cool kids was absent one day, so I ended up sitting there. I sat next to this girl named Riley. And over the school year, me and Riley became really close friends. One day at the lunch table, she told me she had a really, really big secret that she could only share with me and that I can't tell anybody else. She told me that she was Hannah Montana. And at first, I was a little bit confused because I saw Hannah Montana on TV and she didn't really look like her that much. But then she had told me that her hair was just a wig because her hair was blonde and her actual hair is brown. And her family told her that she had to tell everybody her name was Riley, but in reality, her name was Miley. She invited me over her house to see her walk-in closet and to also show me herself without her wig. Little 1st grade me was so hype about joining the cool table, but not only that, now I was friends with Hannah Montana. So I went to her house and then soon realized she wasn't Hannah Montana.
There was this boy in my kindergarten class. We'll name him Stan. Stan was the kid who would pick his nose, eat weird lunches, and was the class clown, but nobody laughed at anything he said because all his jokes were poopy jokes. I don't know why I remember this. It's pretty random, but it's just one of those memories that have stuck with me throughout all these years. So this girl, we'll name her Bella. She was always trying to get everyone in trouble. She would tattletale on everyone. And I didn't have the typical kindergarten teacher. The one that's like, okay kids, we're gonna pass the ball around and say what we loved about our summer. And then we're gonna eat these cupcakes that I brought. No. My kindergarten teacher was like, why are you talking during nap time? Why are you packing your books at 2:59? We end at 3. So long story short, I was terrified of her. So anyway, the teacher told us to open our notebooks. Logan opened his to the middle of the book and not like the next clean page. And the teacher yelled at him. So I said to Bella, "Logan's so stupid." Bella was like, "Ooh." Then she tattled on me.
Story of the time my family thought I was hungover when I wasn't. So it was Christmas Eve, and my family doesn't celebrate Christmas, so in the past I've gone to friends' houses or boyfriends' houses that I've dated to basically celebrate with their families. But even though we didn't celebrate Christmas the traditional way, we would always go to the movie theaters on Christmas Day. So it was Christmas Eve and I went to my best friend's house at the time. And I had went with her to midnight mass. So we were out pretty late that night. And then when we got back to her house, I'm pretty sure we did each other's makeup or she did my makeup or something, and we were just hanging out watching movies, doing nothing that we weren't supposed to. So the next morning I woke up with really bad period cramps, and when I was a teenager, I was always really scared to ask my friends or ask my friends' parents for medicine or water even. So I called my mom and told her she could pick me up and asked her to bring me a Tylenol and 2 water bottles because I was really thirsty. So my mom comes, I get in the car, and the first thing my sister says to me is, "Oh, you're dehydrated? You need Tylenol? Why's that?" Part 2 is posted already. Go check it out. Link in bio. Story of the time my family thought I was hungover when I wasn't. Part 2. So my family comes to pick me up, and my mom had brought me 2 water bottles and a Tylenol. And right when I get in the car, my sister's like, "Oh, what do you need 2 water bottles for? Why are you dehydrated? You need Tylenol? You have a headache? What's going on?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do have a headache." Only because I was 15 at the time, and talking about my period in front of my dad was just not an ideal situation. Then she was like, "Oh yeah, you were at midnight mass." Imagine my quotation fingers, by the way. And I was like, "Yeah, I actually was at midnight mass." And she starts quizzing me what did you learn about? What was the preacher preaching about? How long were you there? And I was like, "You really think that I was trying to pay attention? I was just there to support my friend because she had to go." So then the entire car ride, we keep going back and forth screaming at each other. And now that I'm telling this story, it wasn't really my family that thought I was hungover. It was kind of just my sister trying to convince my parents that I was, which is literally so annoying. I was so beyond pissed off. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait in the car until the movie's over. But my mom just ended up taking me home.
If a website ever asks you these questions, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Masha who heard that there's a new service that gives everyone free internet access. So she decided to use it, but this would lead to something horrifying for Masha and her family. After she connected to this internet service, a web page popped up asking her to register some information. But the questions were oddly personal. It asked, "What's your usual mode of transportation?" with a photo of a bus, a boat, a train, and a plane. Masha took her bike to school every day, so she clicked on the train instead. But the next day, the local news showed that there was a horrific train crash that killed everyone on board. Masha thought that this was a coincidence, but soon she'd realized that she made a deadly mistake. Later, she needed to use the internet again, so she logged back in. This time it asked, "What kind of home do you live in?" along with 4 different pictures of different types of homes. She clicked apartment even though her and her family lived in a house. And the next day, the apartment building near her school burned down. The police suspected arson. Then she went back to the internet server one last time, but this time it showed a photo of her mother, father, sister, and herself with the question, "Who is your favorite family?"
This is the reason why everybody thought I dropped out of high school. Over the 4 years of high school, I was probably in school a total of 100 times altogether. And this wasn't because I was lazy. I mean, partially. But it was mostly because I had really bad stomach problems. So I always had these doctor's appointments. I was always missing school because my stomach hurt. So then my junior year, since my attendance was really, really bad, they decided to put me on home instruction. This means that teachers would come to my house for about 2 hours a day, 3 days a week. And my teachers had to bring with them these time slips. For example, saying that they saw me from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And when I was a minor, my dad had to sign it. And when they hand in those time slips, those are the hours they're getting paid for. So I had this one teacher. She was my history teacher, but we would literally just gossip the entire time. She was mad chill. Sometimes, though, she would cancel on me. And sometimes I would cancel on her. But this was my senior year, so I was 18. So I was able to sign the time slips. So I saw her once a month when I was supposed to see her 4 times a month. So every time she came, I signed 4 time slips. I got the credit, she got the check.
We put our teacher in the hospital. Story time. My 6th grade class was so freaking bad, you guys. I mean, I wasn't, but the rest of the kids were horrible. Our classroom was located on the 2nd floor, so sometimes kids would throw things out the window and try to hit the kids on the ground. And normally it would just be things like pencils or crumbled up pieces of paper, nothing that could really hurt anybody, right? But one day while we were taking a test, my teacher had realized she forgot something in her car, so she left us in the classroom by ourselves. And some kids in my class thought it would be perfect to use this opportunity to cheat. So there was one kid in my class, and we're gonna name him Chris, but he decided to be a lookout, so he stood near the window to keep an eye out for the teacher. Well, when he saw her coming, the rest of the kids weren't done cheating yet, so they told him to cause a distraction. So he runs over to his desk, grabs the biggest textbook he can find, and throws it out the window at the teacher. The book hits her in the face, and it busted her bottom lip open. It was so bad that the school had to send her to the hospital.
Story of the time I let a stranger drive me home. Disclaimer, do not do this. So at the time, I was either 15 or 16 and I worked at a shoe store. I became really close friends with the people that I worked with and they were a little bit older than me. And Uber was definitely a thing back then, but nobody ever used it. And a lot of my friends would use taxis, but they were pretty expensive, so I was not trying to get one. My parents were out of town and my friend that was going to drive me home also worked at the mall, but she ended up going home sick, so she couldn't take me home anymore. So I start asking my coworkers if anybody would be able to take me home. But they all lived super far away from me in the opposite direction, so they all said no. The mall closed at 9:30 and we usually got out of work at 10, but I ended up sitting in the waiting area until 11 o'clock just hoping that somebody would be able to pick me up. A few security guards came up to me and asked me why am I still in the mall, and I told them I'm waiting for a ride, so they let me stay. Mind you, I was sitting by an exit, so I see this cute guy walking towards the exit, and I talked to him a few times because he also works in the mall. He was like, "You're still here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't have a ride." And he was like, "I got you."
Can you solve this mystery? This is a story about two young girls, Mandy and Melissa, who were identical twins. But one day they were kidnapped by an unknown man. No one knew who the kidnapper was, but something isn't adding up here. All the clues to what really happened are hidden in what I'm about to say. So Mandy and Melissa were born to a very rich family. They lived in a large mansion with their father and older brother. Everyone was jealous of these girls because their father loved them so much and gave them everything that they wanted and all of his attention. But one tragic night, the girls were taken. When they woke up, they were blindfolded and tied to chairs so they couldn't see a thing. They were terrified. Suddenly, Mandy heard a high-pitched voice whispering in her ear. It was the kidnappers. He said, "I've contacted your parents and I'm demanding $1 million ransom. If you try to escape, I will kill Melissa." Then Melissa heard the same voice whisper in her ear. He said, "I contacted your parents and I'm demanding $1 million ransom. If you try to escape, I will kill Mandy." So who kidnapped the twin girls and why did they do it? Can you solve this mystery?
Extremely creepy story time on how my aunt passed away. So a little background information. About 5 years ago, my aunt had gotten pregnant. It was really weird because a few months before she got pregnant, the doctor told her that she would never be able to have kids. And her husband had been trying for years. Well, I think like 2 weeks after the baby was born, it had passed away. And I don't really know why. For some reason, my mom won't tell me. Which is weird, but anyways, after that, my aunt just felt like a lot of things weren't going the way that she wanted them to in her life. So she decided to get closer with God. Well, every Sunday night, we go to my grandparents' house for a family dinner. And while we were there, my aunt starts going on this whole rampage. She said that God's not giving her the answers that she needs, and I don't really know what she means by answers. So my grandparents kick her out because she's acting like a psycho. Well, the same night at 3 a.m. in the morning, we hear a knocking on the door. And lo and behold, it's my aunt. So my mom lets her in because she feels bad and feels like she's the only one that will actually listen to my aunt. So she makes everybody sit at the kitchen table. And she pulls out a Ouija board from her bag, like for part 2. Creepy story time about how my aunt passed away, part 2. So like I said, she makes us all sit down at the kitchen table and she pulls out a Ouija board. She was like, "I found out how I can get some answers. I just feel like I need you guys around me for positive energy." And my family is very, very religious. Like, we don't fuck with that shit. Because my mom felt bad for her, she let her use it in our house. But my mom didn't want my sisters and I around that, so she just sent us to bed. Well, the next morning, I wake up and I ask my mom what happened with the Ouija board situation. My mom just said that it was really scary, because before she thought it was like a load of bullshit, and she said that her and my dad didn't touch the Ouija board, because like I said, they were very religious and did not mess with that stuff. But apparently, it said for her not to buy a house with the numbers 2815. Well, 2 years later, my aunt got remarried, and her husband ended up having 2 kids. So they bought a new house, and no, it didn't have the numbers on it. One of their kids accidentally shattered the glass door, so they went and got a new one, and it came with those exact numbers on it. 2 days later, the house burnt down and nobody survived.
Story of the time when this woman hit my parked car while I was sitting in it. Fun fact, this story happened 4 hours ago. I went to ShopRite to find more of these little jars. They didn't have them and there are no other stores near me, so I was too lazy to drive more than 10 minutes away. So after I walk out of ShopRite, I sit in my car for a little bit. I was on my phone watching TikToks. And all of a sudden, my car jerked back. And it made me jump because I was so confused. So I look up and it's this elderly woman.
We made eye contact while her car was still touching my car, but then I looked away because I felt really awkward. Then she went in reverse, got out of her car, and started walking towards the shopping carts. And I started freaking out and calling all my friends. And all my friends were telling me to call the police, but first confront this lady. And I don't know why, but I was literally so nervous to just confront this lady. So then I confront her and I'm like, hey, you hit my car. And it left a scuff. And she was like, I thought I felt something. And I was like, ha ha ha. So I called the police, and while we were waiting for the officer to come, we had a really great...
Can we make it a trend to tell our stories about the worst Valentine's Day gift we ever got? I feel like it would just be so funny. I'll tell mine first. So I was dating this boy. At the time, we were dating for a little bit over a year. And he was always bad at planning, so I was like, why don't we go to Olive Garden for Valentine's Day? So before our little date, I went to the store and I bought him a bunch of stuff. I got him a card, I got him candy, I got him shoes and a new outfit. Easily dropped my whole paycheck. So I went to his house before we got taken to Olive Garden, because at the time we didn't drive. And I gave him his gift. He told me he didn't have anything for me, but I loved him so much I was like, it's fine. So we go to Olive Garden, and he gets a call from his brother. His brother was really upset because he planned a surprise for his wife to go home early from work and surprise her with flowers, chocolates, and a teddy bear, and balloons. But he walked in on his best friend railing his wife. So after all that, my ex asked him to pick us up. He gets us. When my ex told him he got me nothing, his brother gave me those gifts.
Today at work, I was trying to call my wife, but for some reason, my phone calls weren't getting through to her, so I used one of my coworkers' phones to dial my house number and call home. So I call home, and a sweet voice answers the phone. It's my daughter. I go, hey, cutie, how you doing? She goes, hey, daddy, what's up? And I go, I'm just at work. What are you and mommy doing? She says, well, I just finished lunch, and mommy's upstairs. I go, cutie, what's mommy doing upstairs? She goes, she's with Uncle Paul. And I go, Uncle Paul? We don't have an Uncle Paul. What do you mean? She's like, yeah, she's with Uncle Paul. They're upstairs in their room. So I'm like, cutie, that doesn't sound right. So what I want you to do is I want you to leave the phone on the kitchen table, go upstairs to your mommy's room and say, hey, daddy just pulled in the driveway, and tell me what happens, all right? Did it, and like a minute later, she comes back and picks up the phone and goes, okay, daddy, I did it. And I go, okay, what happened? She goes, well, mommy came running out of her room naked, and she tripped down the stairs and bumped her head, and now she can't get up. So I was like, what about the other guy? And she goes, well, Uncle Paul tried to jump out of the window into the pool, but he missed and hit the floor. Now he won't wake up. So I was like, we don't have a pool. Then I look at the phone number, and I was like, oh, sorry, wrong number.
I found my daughter that I gave up for adoption without even looking for her. Well, since it was a small business with only 3 employees and me, I had a close relationship with employees. But I had a close relationship with, let's call her, Julia. The reason why we had such a close relationship was because she did share with me that she was adopted. And obviously I shared with her that I did give up a baby for adoption. And she never judged me. She always told me that she would do anything to find her biological mother. This girl was raised right. Well, I shared with her all the details on why I gave my baby up for adoption and that I would love to meet that baby one day. Well, behind my back, she decided to investigate. I don't know how, don't ask me. 3 months later, she came in with some paperwork, told me that she was my daughter, with tears in her eyes. And well, I obviously busted out crying as well. I asked her to forgive me and I told her why it all happened. She told me those weren't sad tears, they were tears of joy. Said she never hated me, and now we're in each other's lives. How crazy. Storytime on how I found my daughter without even looking for her. When I was 15, I got pregnant by who I thought was the love of my life. But as soon as he found out that I was pregnant, he said he didn't want anything to do about it and that if I wanted, I could get an abortion. I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking about it. I decided to tell my mom. I was scared at first, but then I remembered my mom and I have a really good relationship. And she told me I had 3 options. I could have the baby, I could have an abortion, or I could have the baby and give it up for adoption. I decided to have the baby, which later on I found out it was a girl, and then give her up for adoption because I wasn't going to be able to give her the life that she deserved. And I said that maybe in the future, I would look for her, explain to her what happened, and tell her that I could be a part of her life if she wanted me to. Well, in 2015, I was able to open my own little coffee shop where I hired 3 employees. By that time, I was married and had 2 wonderful toddlers. Well, from the 3 employees that I hired, one of them was my daughter, but I didn't know it at the time. Running out of time, follow me for part.
Last winter, me and my 3 friends, we went on some big-ass road trip, but we had to be back by Tuesday because we were taking winter classes, and we all had the same math test that day. So we were at some log cabin, and we drank a little too much, and no one wanted to take the test on Tuesday, so we all emailed the professor Monday night. We all emailed him the same lie, saying that while we were on the road trip, we got a flat tire Monday night, and we weren't able to make the test on Tuesday, so if we could, can we please take it on Wednesday? So the professor emailed us back saying, yeah, no problem, take the test on Wednesday, stuff happens, I understand. So the four of us walk into math class that morning to take the test, and we're all happy that our lie worked and this and that. So he gives us the test, and he puts us in 4 separate rooms, which I didn't care. It's just to prevent cheating. So I take the test, and it's out of 100 points. The first question, worth 5 points, was, what's 10 divided by 2? And I'm like, this is easy, it's 5. The second question, which was worth 95 points, was, which tire was flat?
Part 2 of how my whole entire online class found out that I was pregnant and one of them told my mom. So continuing with the story, I texted a couple of them back and I was like, how did you know? And they were like, we heard you sobbing in the background screaming, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. Then one of them goes, we heard some guy in the background screaming, just get a hanger, and you were screaming, no! Then one of them comes to tell me that the teacher had to start a brand new class because I wouldn't mute myself. So then I emailed my teacher and I told her that I was going through a really hard time and I really do apologize. And then she explained to me that everything was fine, like she understands, things happen. So we were all good until like 3 days later. And my mom calls me telling me that somebody in my class had told her that I am pregnant. And I tried telling her like, no, like that is not true. That is not true whatsoever. And then she sends me a recording that somebody else sent her of me in my room bawling my eyes out screaming, I'm pregnant, I don't know what to do. So somebody in my class was a big old snitch and sent a recording of me screaming I'm pregnant to my mom. And my mom is trying to force me to get an abortion, but I don't want to. To sum it up, I'm moving in with my grandma because she's super, super supportive. And in 3 months, I'll be having a baby boy. Story time of how my entire virtual online class found out that I was pregnant and one of them ended up telling my mom. So due to COVID where I live, there is no in-person school, so everybody is virtual. So I was in my first block, and you only have to turn on your cameras for when she does attendance and then when you're talking. So I was called on and I had to answer a question, so I unmuted myself and I turned on my camera. And then when I was done, I turned off my camera and I think I forgot to mute myself back. After that, during that week, I was already having a pregnancy scare, so I FaceTimed my boyfriend and I went to go take a pregnancy test. Mind you, I don't really listen in class to begin with, so I turned the volume all the way back down because when the teacher calls on you once, she doesn't call on you again. So again, I couldn't hear anything happening in the classroom. So I was on the phone with my boyfriend, I was freaking out while I was taking a pregnancy test, and it ended up coming back positive. So I started freaking out and I started bawling my eyes out, and in my room, I was screaming, I'm pregnant, what am I gonna do? I look back over and the session had ended and everyone in that class was texting me like, oh my god, are you okay? I'm here for you, blah, 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 blah. So of course I start to freak out. I'm running out of time like for part 2.
So I got revenge on my obsessive best friend for spreading rumors about me. So I put together an apology gift for her for bullying her, even though I did not. The gift that I put together was some makeup I got from Walgreens, but I decided to add some poison ivy to the eyeshadow so that she would get a rash. I then set up a hidden camera and watched as she put it on. And as expected, the rash started to form. After she noticed, I started to tell her off and accuse her of all the stuff she did to me, and she was so pissed that I managed to get a confession out of her. She was very much just like, yeah, I did that. Literally over me not wanting to spend every waking second with her. And the best part of it is that she threatened me on camera. So I cut out the part about the poison makeup and told her if she didn't tell my friends, coaches, and significant other what she was doing, I would send the video to everyone. So she admitted to all of her crimes and I got back on the team. I got my friends back and my boyfriend apologized. I ended up totally fine and she ended up losing credibility with basically everyone. If any of you guys have a story you'd like me to share on my TikTok, follow my
Story time. So ever since I was like 8 years old, I've always gotten headaches. And I don't know why. I drink water, I eat enough food, and I get enough sleep, but I still just be getting headaches for no reason. Anyways, my freshman year, someone convinced me that I had a brain tumor. I really believed it too. It was quite embarrassing. So I was doing cheer at the time, and I was getting nosebleeds like every single day, along with a raging headache. And they would always happen randomly. Like I wasn't doing anything to cause them. It just happened. So one day, in the middle of my math class, my nose just started bleeding. Before that, I had a terrible headache, and the girl that was sitting next to me told me my nose was bleeding. As I'm cleaning my nose, the girl's like, I noticed that you get a lot of headaches and nosebleeds. My grandpa had a brain tumor, and I think that's what you have. And I was just sitting there like, I guess this is how God wanted me to go out. The whole day, I was stressing. Then when I get home, I start writing my mom a goodbye letter and picking out the clothes I want at my funeral. Then I told my sister about it, and she smacked me upside the head and called me stupid.
Story time of how my best friend got so weirdly obsessed with me that she even plotted to kill my boyfriend. So at the time, me and this girl, let's just call her Olivia, had only been friends for about 2 years. I mean, we really did everything together. We were with each other 24/7, and I mean, we were pretty good friends. But the only thing about our friendship is she did not like when I had other friends. I mean, she didn't have any other friends herself, but literally she would joke around about strangling my other friends.
because she didn't like when I gave my attention to anyone else. But honestly, I just thought of it as a joke. And then I started dating this guy, let's just name him Jacob. He was probably the sweetest guy I had ever met, and he was a real simp for me. So we started dating and about 4 or 5 months go by, and he started getting these texts from a random number. And it would always be cringy things like leave her or you die, get away from her, and like stupid cringy threats. Then one night, me and him were just hanging out. Then he gets a text with his exact address saying he had till tonight to leave me or he wouldn't see another day. Then we hear a knock at the door. I'm running out of time, like for part 2.
This is why you should never rush to conclusions. Once there was a young couple getting married. At their wedding reception, their friends decided to play a game of hide and seek with the bride and the groom. It was decided that the groom would try to find his bride and the bride would find somewhere to hide. But hours passed and the groom had searched everywhere in the venue and couldn't find where she was hiding. He assumed that she must be having second thoughts about getting married. He got mad and stormed off. Weeks went by and he accepted that she must have gone on with her life and didn't want to contact him anymore, so he did the same. A few years later, though, the cleaning lady found something horrifying. She went into the attic of the building where the reception had taken place years ago. There, she found an old trunk. She opened it and found the rotting body of the missing bride. Her face was still frozen in a scream, and inside the trunk were huge scratch marks from when she tried to get out.
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid. And I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend." So then she called one of my other best friends and said, "No, it actually wasn't an accident." And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
Do you like taking pictures of your friends and family? One woman took photos of her daughter, but what she saw after the photos were developed was terrifying. So her daughter always dreamt of being a ballerina, until one tragic day when she fell ill. The doctor said that she didn't have long. She quickly lost a lot of energy and soon could barely leave her bed. But one day when her mother came into her room, she was dancing again. Her mother was so happy. She grabbed her film camera and began taking photos, and soon after something horrifying happened. Her daughter's eyes rolled back and she fell on the floor. She was quickly taken to the hospital, where doctors said that she succumbed to her illness because the dancing was too much for her heart to handle. However, when her mother developed the photos that she took earlier just to remember her daughter by, she could not believe what she saw. In every picture, she saw a dark shadow standing behind her daughter, clutching her head and pulling her back and forth. Something in her daughter's room was forcing her to dance.
Storytime of how my stepmom got so jealous of me and my dad's bond that she plotted to kill me. So I never really liked my stepmom in the first place because she was a little controlling over my dad. And I just knew that she hated me and I really hated her too. But you know, my dad was in love and he seemed happy, so I didn't really say anything. And my dad would always take me to lunch on Saturdays and Sundays. And we'd have like a dad-daughter bonding day, I guess. And me and my dad were just super close. And every single weekend, me going to lunch with him would start an argument between them two because she said I was taking time away from them two. My dad really never chose sides, but I never really got involved in the relationship as much as I hated her because I just loved seeing my dad happy. Also, at this time, I was 15. And what I'm about to say next might sound just a little crazy and unbelievable, but I'm not sure who she was on the phone with. But while on the phone with somebody, she was talking about getting rid of me. Mind you, my mom had passed away when I was younger, and I really had no other family to go to. Now, this is where the story takes a turn for the worse and she tries to get rid of me. I'm running out of time, like for the crazy part 2.
Extremely toxic best friend part 2. So pretty much her excuse for that was, oh, well, he said that he was gonna leak my nudes if I didn't send him them again. Which was a lie because literally half the school already had her nudes. So then I started talking to this other boy. And he lived like right down the street from her. So she was like, if you want to go to his house, you can. And I was like, are you sure? And she said, yeah, just go tell my mom.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and told her mom where I was going and went over his house. So I walked back to her house and she literally locked me out. Like her mom had to come open the door for me to let me in. And she was like, oh, it's a good thing you came back when you did. Because I was going to drive you home now and tell your dad everything that you did. And she goes, I don't think you guys should be together because you're unexperienced. And she would always tell me how he flirts with her all the time. So after our friendship ended, she goes, I just felt like it was always a competition between me and you. Part 2 of how my stepmom got so jealous of me and my dad's bond that she plotted to kill me. Continuing on with the story, I don't know who she was on the phone with, but I overheard her on the phone saying that she was going to get rid of me. And honestly, I didn't really care and I didn't really think anything of it because I knew she was crazy, but I didn't think she was that crazy. So all of a sudden, she started making me breakfast. And I'm not a breakfast person. I can't eat right when I get up. So every time she would make me breakfast, I'd be like, thanks, but I'm not hungry. And she would get so mad. Like, so freaking mad. I'm not going to get into all the little details, but comes to find out, she was putting rat poison in my food. She had set up cameras in my room. And I don't know what kind of sense this makes. I think she's just crazy, but she started to hide snakes in my room and claim it was my fault that the snakes were coming in my room. Yeah, doesn't really make any sense. Once I told my dad and my dad got out of his little in love stage with her, he finally stepped up and said something to her. And she admitted that she wanted me dead. He eventually called the cops, and to this day, she is in jail for attempted murder. Oh, did I forget to mention the day that he broke up with her, she tried to stab me in the throat.
Do you style your hair the same way every day? Well, there's an urban legend about a woman who always wore her hair in a bun, but for her, this habit would lead to something terrifying. This woman loved wearing her hair in a bun, but she might have taken it a bit too far. She didn't want to style her hair differently or even take out her bun to clean her hair. Whenever she took a shower, she would just wear a shower cap to make sure the water didn't mess up her bun. At night, she would sleep with a towel around her hair so the bun didn't move. After a while, she had to put hairspray in it to mask the smell. Then her scalp started feeling itchy, so she would put more hairspray in it. Even when the itching got intense, she just applied more hairspray. But her husband finally found out about how bad the situation had gotten when he woke up one day and his wife was still asleep. He tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't move. She had died in the middle of the night. The husband called the police, fearing that something unusual might have happened. But when her body was examined, they finally took out her bun. Inside her hair, they found something terrifying. They found a huge spider had gotten into her hair, made a nest, and laid eggs. When the baby spiders hatched, they bit through her skull and ate her brain.
Storytime about my shitty ass ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. My ex and I have been dating for about 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, he was a dick. He would cheat on me, talk to other girls more than me, but of course I pretended that everything was perfect in my relationship. I would brag to all these people about how my relationship was so good, blah blah blah, and everything else. Because it's embarrassing whenever bitches can talk shit because your relationship is very toxic. Like, listen to this bullshit. The whole 2 years we were dating, I had over 10 girls DM me on Instagram saying that they screwed my boyfriend at his house. I never confronted him about it. I was just one of those girls that cared way too much about what everybody else thought. Okay, now fast forward. And it was a Friday at school, and Thanksgiving break was the following day. And him and I have this whole plan to spend the whole break together, because literally a week before that, he was on vacation in North Carolina for 2 whole weeks. Well, instead of going with him after school, I decided to go home, get an overnight bag. Part 2 about my shitty ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the original plan was for us to go together to his house after school. But I was like, I'm going to be spending the whole week over there. I should probably pack some clothes and get a shower. So after school, he drove me to my house. And he said that his parents wanted to have dinner together, so he had to go back to his house. And he would pick me up later. So when I got to my house, I got ready and everything, blah, blah, blah. And by this time, it was like 8 o'clock. So I kept texting and calling him, asking him where he's at, if he's coming to get me still. Then I realized that none of my text messages were going through. So then I go to text him on Snap. And what do you know? I couldn't find him on there. And then I call him off my mom's phone. He answers the phone and hangs up right away. Well, we were supposed to have a little party at his house too, that all of my friends were going to. So I texted every single one of them. None of them answered the phone. And I remembered that my one friend had shared her location with me before. So I went and looked at her location and where was she at? My boyfriend's house. So while I sat at home crying that whole week, he was throwing parties and cheating on me with my friends. And when we went back to school, he acted like we were never in a relationship.
Storytime of how I caught my dad and my stepdad sleeping together. So a little background information, my mom and my real dad got a divorce when I was around 4. So like the typical, on the weekdays I'd be at my mom and on the weekends I'd be at my dad's. Then when I was around age 6, my mom married my stepdad. And since they got married at such a young age, I called my stepdad dad and my real dad dad.
This story ends up with a lot of confusion and chaos, so just get ready for that. So everything started to get a little weird when my stepdad went to go drop me off at my dad's house one day. My stepdad actually went into my dad's house and they talked for about like 5 hours. You see, I went to sleep and then the next morning my stepdad and my dad were both making me breakfast. And then I overheard my stepdad on the phone with my mom saying that he had an overnight shift. So I didn't say anything because every time I tell my mom something, she ends up believing my stepdad anyways. Because I mean, my stepdad's always right? Anyways, the next time that he had dropped me off, my stepdad ended up staying again. Then I ended up walking into my dad's room seeing both of their pants off. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Part 2 of how I caught my dad and my stepdad sleeping together. Continuing on with the story, I asked my dad a question, so I walk into his room and I see my dad and my stepdad's pants off. One was laying down, the other was... You guys get the point. My dad quickly jumps off the bed and he jumps up so fast that he falls off the bed and he goes, honey, it's not what it looks like. And then my stepdad said, get out. So I thought it was funny, so I took a picture and I sent it to my mom because I knew she wouldn't believe me if I didn't have proof. And then she went crazy and tried to kill both of them because, he cheated on her. Then she ended up in like a mental hospital. They declared her crazy or something. So I don't see her anymore. And now I have 2 gay dads, and let me tell you, it's probably the best thing in the world. So basically, to sum it up, my stepdad cheated on my mom with my dad, and then my mom went crazy trying to kill my stepdad and my dad. Then she ended up in a mental hospital, so now I don't see her anymore. And yeah, I have 2 dads now. Now they got married, and yeah, I'm pretty happy. Even though she's crazy, I kind of miss my mom.